We are about to begin. At this time, I'd like to invite Deacon Peggy Hahn back to the stage for her last keynote.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. How are you guys? You are the hardy and committed because you're still here. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for making that commitment to helping your congregation grow by hanging out for this message, which is honestly my favorite keynote with you. And before we get started on that, just a couple of announcements that I think will be helpful. One is that I am going to mix you up again, just FYI. And I am going to ask you when you do that to make sure you have one of the feedback cards. I've sprinkled them around the room, and I'm pretty sure I didn't get the right number on the right tables. So you'll have to just share with each other and sort that out, because I would love to have feedback from each one of you. And friends, it's not my hope that you would start doing that now. Let's wait till the end of the session, but since we're moving, I thought we could maybe use that as an opportunity. Also, if there are any empty workbooks that no one at your table is using, I've been made aware that we do have people in the room who don't have workbooks, and we want to make sure if you would just raise your hand or something. You got empty over here and 2 empties. So if you need workbooks, these are the people you want to approach. That would be great. Thank you guys for sharing. Listen, that brings me to an important announcement. The PowerPoint presentation and the workbooks are going to be available from your bishop's office so that you'll get an email following up from the assembly with access to these resources. It will invite you to become a lead partner. All that is signing in through the process. It'll tell you exactly what to do on our website. There is no cost for partnership. Okay? And that does allow you to have access to all of these resources, which we hope you take advantage of so that you can use them in your congregation. If there are ways in which you need it delivered to you differently than how we offer it, just send us an email and we can figure that out for you. And then finally, last announcement is, I mentioned this yesterday, but I want to say it again. If this is exciting to you, and I hope it is, this idea of moving your congregation from judger to learner, technical and adaptive work as leaders, and you want to practice this together. Bishop Sue and 5 other judicatory leaders, so this is across different denominations, are going to be kicking this off in August, where you'll have one day to learn together, moving into what will be 3 months of coaching cohorts. So your Synod is investing in you in this way, and my hope is that it's called Another Way, and one of the ways this is another way is that we are doing this as a collaborative effort with other Christian leaders in the geography of your Synod. So take advantage of that, please. Okay. Before then I begin with this session, here's my invitation, that you take this last effort to meet people you have not met yet, and that you actually do get up and move tables, and you all come towards this way so that I can look you in the eye if you don't mind. And it's fine if you're attending children to stay where you are, which, by the way, isn't that the coolest thing ever? Yes. Oh my gosh. What has taken us so long to do that, I don't know. And if you are a youth or a young adult leader and you have been involved in some ongoing conversations throughout this time, please group together at around a table so that you can continue to have those conversations. Okay, ready, set, move, please. Come on, people, you can do it. Meet some friends. Group up. I love it. Bring your evaluation form with you. I love the bell. Shh. Thank you so much for taking this time to get to know other leaders in your synod. I should come down there? I'll tell you what, I would love to come down on the ground. Usually I do, but I'm afraid that you couldn't see me. You can? You can.
Hi, I'm Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Just went around to say hi.
You guys, this is Joe. Woo, thank you, Joe. Isn't that awesome? Joe is just meeting people. You guys the spirit in this place is terrific. Thank you for being so generous and so gracious and willing to do this important work. So our last session together involves some really important sacred shifts that I think are priorities for our congregations, and it has to do with shifting our leadership metrics. So, if I'm pushing the right button, we'll be in business. This information is in the Faithful Metrics book, as, by the way, is all of the adaptive leadership work. It's in a little different order. It starts with the metrics and moves to the adaptive work, but that stuff is written in here if that's helpful for you, okay? And this book, if you buy it at the conference, along with the value cards, are $20. Here's my sales pitch. I can't help myself because I'm so excited about this. There's a little secret code in the book. Yes, you could share it with each other, but I hope you don't. And it will get you access to a bunch of other resources that are available on the website, including how to use the value cards, okay? And if you need help with some of that, just let us know. So a couple years ago, I had the privilege of walking the Camino de Santiago in Spain. I hear you guys loving this. Have any of you done it? Yes, I have some fellow pilgrims. Anyone on this side? Talk to them. You guys, I'm thinking Lead should have a 2020 pilgrimage. Maybe you would come. It's a phenomenal experience. Now, I've hiked the Inca Trail. Maybe I've told you about that. That is not for everybody. It was hardly for me. It just about killed me, to be honest. But the Camino is for everyone. And it is a completely generous community I would really encourage you to consider doing as you think about your own spirituality. Now, when people go to walk the Camino, they usually go with some kind of purpose in their hearts. Now, the story is that generally people come out of the Camino with something else. God does something to you as you move through that space that you were not expecting, right? And I do want to say one of the prayers that I went with was the pain I feel in you as leaders around the metrics of our church. Serious pain. And I try really hard to listen to you. By the way, I've been listening carefully since I've been here. I've been sitting today in different places to hear a little of your stories. So I'll be feeding some of that to you in our conversation today. The thing is that one thing I noticed is that leaders are foggy when it comes to figuring out what to measure for their church. And most often we're measuring the most unhelpful kinds of things that don't give us any confidence. As I began to prepare to walk the Camino, I asked people everywhere what it was I should do to prepare. Like, what do I need to know? Maybe you guys did that before you walked. I talked to other pilgrims, and this is what they said to me. They said, beware of the hot spots. Beware of the hot spots. Now, y'all can't answer, and if you've been on the Missional River and you know the answer, you cannot answer. But the rest of you, what is a hot spot? Do you know?
Well, it's like a stove, isn't it?
It's not a stove. It's not. It was sort of. Dan? Well, that is a hot spot, but that's not what, it's similar to what they were talking about, but not quite. Source of pain. Well done. So here's the thing. I had no idea what they were talking about. I just smiled and nodded. Do you ever do that? Oh, yeah, I'll beware of the hot spot. Do you ever just like bluff your way through? I've done it so many times. This is like a leadership technique, right? You just smile and nod. You make a note to check it out later so you can, speak with wisdom at some point. By the third day, as I was walking on the Camino de Santiago in Spain, this is a pilgrimage that people all over Europe walk out of their front door. I'm not making this up. If you Googled it, you would see the pathways all over Europe. And they walk to Santiago de Compostela, which is, as legend has it, the place where the bones of St. James are buried. Not a huge motivator for me as a Lutheran Christian, but the space to pray and walk for 10 days. That called my name. But I didn't understand the hot spots. By day 3, I knew what they were talking about. And it is indeed a source of pain, and they are talking about the pain on your feet. It took 3 days for me to get this. Here's the thing. When you feel a hot spot on your foot as you're walking, with your sandals or your tennis shoes or your hiking boots, everyone walks in something different. You have a choice to make. You can stop, you can sit down, take off your shoes, your socks, in my case, 2 layers of socks, whatever your secret is for your feet, because trust me, there's zillions of advice you get on how to take care of your feet on the Camino. You can do that. Meanwhile, the people you've been walking with just go on and leave you, right? And you're losing track of the conversation or the prayer partners you've been with. Or maybe they stop with you and you feel badly for holding them up. And when you do stop, every other pilgrim walking by gives you their advice on how to deal with it, right? Do you need a Band-Aid? How about powder? How about Vaseline? How about this stuff I picked up somewhere along the way? Everyone has a concoction for how to deal with the pain, right? But either way, you have a choice. The choice is to stop what you're doing or to keep going and get a blister. It's real. And I'm telling you that because, friends, I think as leaders in the church, we have been having hot spots for a long time. We've been feeling the pains around us that have been alerting us. Listen, I've been on the bishop's staff in Gulf Coast Synod for 20 years. That's hard to say, but it's true. And on my watch, I've been watching fewer and fewer people be confirmed. I've been watching fewer and fewer young people be in youth groups. I've been watching fewer and fewer of college students returning to church. Haven't you seen this hotspot at your place? We haven't stopped. We have not stopped to pay attention to the pain. Instead, what we've done is kept on doing what we've kept on doing. And by doing that, we have taken a hot spot and turned it into a blister that now is really serious, right? Every one of our congregations has done this. This is actually not a Lutheran condition. Just like the Camino that represents the ocean of humanity, these hotspots we share are across the board. This is why 6 denominations can do adaptive leadership together, because it's not just one denomination's pain, right? So here's the question for you to wrestle with right now. And we're going to start by sitting with this question. What are the 3 hotspots for leaders to notice in your congregation right now? I want you to name your hotspots, first to yourself. So let's take a minute to sit and reflect without any activity. If you would just sit in your chair. Some of you went to the Zen workshop, so it's a little Zazen moment. With not complete emptiness here, I'm directing. I'd like you to think about hotspots. Thank you. Just for a minute. Oh God, as we come to terms with the hotspots in our own congregations and maybe in our own lives, as we let this go deeper into us, we ask that you give us the courage to speak, to share, and to go to work in whatever way you are calling us forward through the pain and the opportunity. In your name we pray. Amen. Now I want to invite you to turn to the people at your table, and I want you to share your hotspots with one another. In your workbook, there's a place for you to list your top 3 hotspots. Write them down. Talk about this, please. Do you need more time? Yes? Okay, little more time. Okay, 1 more minute. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for being willing to reveal the pain that's going on at your place. Because as we begin more to dig into this idea of metrics, this matters, that we can name this stuff. And I wonder if there are any things that you learned at your table by listening to hotspots that the whole room should know. Were there some themes? Were there some hotspots that were especially significant? And if so, would you go to the microphone to share it? We've got 3 microphones on the floor, and it would be great if others on the floor could hear. You may have to lean over to someone and get permission to share for the whole room. Is there anything like that? I have one to get you in the mood. The young people of this synod who have been meeting have this to tell you. It's on the screen. They said, people want us there, meaning at church, but they don't want us to change anything. Just there to guarantee the future that's just like the past. Those are your young people who are saying this to you. Can you hear it? The hotspot, they don't want us to change. They want us there, good news, they care about us. Bad news, they want us to be just like them. How can that be true? Look at how much our world has changed. How can our young people lead and think about and care about the things we do? They're no less faithful, but they have a different call in a different era of the Christian movement. What else did you hear? I'd love to hear a few themes. Go to the microphone. It would be a lot easier so we can all hear you.
I'm Fred Krebs, pastor at St. Paul Mason, and we just discovered that we had a lot of things in common, of course. Activities outside of church, community activities, school activities just seem to be proliferating to the point that trying to fit in our activities at the church is more difficult. Commitment to membership does not necessarily correlate, as you were saying yesterday. Commitment in the congregation does not necessarily mean commitment to membership. We have people that are participating in various ways, but don't necessarily formalize their membership. And that has some good things about it, but has some challenges about it.
Fred, before you go on, I want to comment on 2 that you've said so far. The first one, you're talking about actually people are setting priorities, and the church is not their priority.
Yeah.
That's what I hear you saying. Are you guys hearing that? Hotspot. Ask yourself why. This is something to dig into. If we glaze over these, there's just a lot of bad news. We're not getting where we need to go with this metrics conversation. So hold that, please.
Job demands is critical. Electronics and technology.
Technology, you're seeing as a hotspot / opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and I heard you talking about the reality of the language of membership, right? You said something about membership.
Right.
Hold that.
Yeah, because we have to fill out a parochial report every year. It's my favorite time of year.
I think this is really important. Your table did a great job. Thank you for being willing to share this.
Yeah. And also just all of us can identify certain things but don't know the answers always.
I get that. So exactly like you might not know what to do with a blister, but other people have ideas, right? I mean, we know there's a lot of pain around those same subjects, and there is some wisdom in this room. Yeah, is there another microphone? Thank you, Fred.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Becky Sonnen from Triumphant Lutheran in Garden Ridge, and we were talking about the people at our church that volunteer and how they kind of get burned out because they don't get enough help from other volunteers. You know, it's just the same ones over and over and over, and they get burned out.
So volunteers are a hotspot at church. At the same time in which the volunteer efforts at something like the Houston Rodeo and Livestock Show, or would be going on in San Antonio, like people are dying to volunteer for this. It's once a year. That's right, but it isn't just one gig, right? It's a huge commitment. So volunteerism in the church is a little different than volunteerism other places. Thank you so much. Over here.
Yeah, I'm Rick Hanger. I'm pastor at Good News in San Antonio. When we talked about, or at least my little groupie, about two hot spots.
Okay.
One is the constant sense of feeling overwhelmed, which is, I think has been touched on, just overwhelmed all the time. With good things, with bad things, with whatever it is, just a sense of that. And I think the other one is, and I don't know if it's smaller, geographical, whatever, but a sense of disconnect. With Synod, with National Church, with each other, we just feel, and it's probably, you know, I wasn't here in 2010, but where I was, you know, so many people left and so many things happened, but whatever it is, just this sense of disconnection, which I think is improving, but it's something we've felt.
Thank you for saying that. I bet a lot of you could resonate with this feeling of being overwhelmed in terms of what do we do, right? I think that's right. Okay, let's hear from a couple more, and then we'll move to the next part of our conversation. Number 3.
Sure. I'm Tamala from Lutheran Church of the Resurrection in Wimberley, and it's not pretty, but those at our table all shared hot spots, lack of worship attendance, decrease in membership as people move, die, disappear, and stagnant giving because of all those things.
Okay, decrease in membership and stagnant giving. Those are real. Thank you very much. We'll take 2 and 1, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Sonia Keller from Zion Lutheran Church in Sublime. Caveat on that, definitely attendance, but in the sense of like coming from small churches or rural churches, how to really engage in attendance out to bring in the community. So of course we do activities as far as Thanksgiving, Christmas, regular go-to holidays to try to contribute with the community, but how are we contributing the rest of the year? What can we do for the whole year besides just major holidays?
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, there are seasons that make it a little bit easier. Yeah.
I'm Meredith Golden from Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church in Victoria, Texas. And the number one hotspot that our table came up with was on the financial side. And the tag of keeping your lights on. What do you do?
And that's a good reason to be overwhelmed, isn't it? Yeah, we're hearing that. Isn't it interesting how you share a lot of these hotspots across from congregation to congregation? Friends, I have the privilege of doing this around the country. I just did this same conversation in North Carolina 3 days ago and a week ago in the Gulf Coast Synod. And I want to tell you, I'm not hearing a lot of differences. This is the lay of the land. This is the place in which we've been called to lead. Okay? So the opportunity is also here. When I was walking the Camino de Santiago in Spain and praying about this challenge, I'm talking about the metrics that we currently have, and you've named them, nickels and noses, butts and bucks, however you want to call it, right? This is the challenge that we're all naming and facing, along with the others that you've also named. What I realized is, as I walked the Camino, I could be paying attention to the miles. How much farther do I have to go to Santiago? But the point is, if I did that, I would miss the moments. If all I'm focused on is 98 more miles, 78 more miles, 68 more miles, 58 more miles, 48 more miles, you hear it? If I'm just looking at these mile markers along the way, and thank goodness they were there so we could go the right way, but if all I'm doing is checking out the markers, I'm missing what God is doing in my life. As I have to step aside so that a team from Africa can go running by chanting. Or as I have to help a man pushing his wife in a wheelchair up the hill right? Or as we notice people with children in backpacks, I can't imagine it, carrying my child on my back while I did that. How beautiful is that? And courageous, right? And the chapels along the way, we could stop and pray and hear the stories of the locals. In Spain, this is remarkable. Everyone understands that the pilgrims are there. Did you guys experience this? Like the whole country kind of is there as your support system. The pilgrim pathway is part of the culture. People are farming, you're walking through their fields. People are driving, they stop so you can cross the street. I had people stop in the middle of the road. I wasn't at an intersection. As I crossed the road to go get a bag of popcorn, they stopped. As I wanted to go back to join my friends, they stopped again. It was like the parting of the Red Sea. It was a very weird feeling, but they did it. I mean, the thing is that if I had just counted the miles, I wouldn't have had these stories to share. I'd have been focused on that and missed the moments. I feel that our focus on how much money we have and how many people are there is reducing our capacity to notice what God is actually doing among us. You guys, at what point did this become the reason we exist as a Christian movement? I mean, it's a little heart-wrenching when you think about that we are dissolving into numbers around things that seldom show up in Scripture. So hang in there with me as I talk about this. Take off your judger hat and put on your learner hat as we dig into this, okay? Please. Because shifting the metrics is key to being the future of the church. We're going to have to rethink what we count. Are you hearing me? Okay. It's the difference between lag and lead metrics. And you may already understand this, but for those who don't, I want to dig into this. And by the way, the definition is in the blue box on your workbook, so I do understand that it's a little tricky to get them straight, but we're going to spend some time thinking about this because this is really important. Okay? Here it is. A lag measure is something that has already happened by the time you get the data. By the time you get it, there is nothing you can do to change it. Does this sound like counting worship attendance to you? It is too late to invite somebody in. It is too late to inspire giving when I'm counting the offering. We are counting stuff that absolutely destroys anything that can inspire us to follow Christ in this changing world. All of our attention is going to something that we have no power to influence. It is a losing proposition. And the more we count how many people are there and how much money they give, guess what? That becomes our purpose. It becomes our true mission statement. I hear it everywhere. I've heard it in this place. The young people have heard it. If we could just have more young people who could start doing what we used to do on these committees so I don't have to do it anymore. You know it's true, right? Yeah, that is a lag metric. Because we're making in that decision an assumption that what I'm doing has to go on till eternity. And it doesn't. The church operated differently in the past, and it will operate differently in the future. So let's stop only counting the lag metrics. Now, before I go into the lead metric, I want to deal with the pushback I get 100% of the time. Everybody says to me, "Yeah, but." The bishop's office asks these questions. The ELCA asks these questions. Here is my answer to that. Count this stuff, give it to them, and set your own metrics. Okay? That is a minimum metric. It is not the best you can do, it is the least you can do. Here's what you can do that will change that. Focus on your lead metrics. Lead metrics are the indicators that leaders intentionally set that have the potential for changing a lag metric. You don't know. This is an adaptive thing. It's an experiment. If we do this, might that change? Are you tracking? A lead metric, you can set any lead metric you want. Nobody's going to argue with you. You can try anything. You are free to lead your church into a changing world. The only thing that is stopping us, honestly, is the courage of disappointing our friends. And we've got to work through this. So, lead metrics look like this. Well, let me go back. A lag metric looks like I got a D on the report card. By the time I get my D, I got to face it. I got a D. I can't change it. It's too late, right? Okay. A lag metric looks like this. Last semester, I got a D. I'm going to start getting a mentor. I am going to go to class more often. I'm going to do my homework. Those are lead metrics. If I do those things, it will definitely change my lag, right? It's doing the work. A lead metric is work. There's no getting around it. So in some ways, we've had the heat too low, right? We've been satisfied with our lag metrics because it's easy to count them without taking seriously. Leadership isn't always doing the least thing we can do. So let's dig into this even a little bit more, because this is important. Other examples of lag metrics at church, and you know this, how many are here, and how much money do people give? These are real lag metrics. We do need this information. You do. This is kind of good business. But is the church primarily a business? What is it? Who said yes? Let's argue with you a little bit. What is the church primarily about? Yes, it's discipleship. We baptize and we come to the table. We worship. This is our primary reason for existing. Otherwise, we're just like any other nonprofit serving in a neighborhood, right? What sets us apart is following Christ. And so we are not primarily a business. There is a component of worship and the life of the church that has a business perspective. But friends, if we just focus on that, we have forgotten that we're following the living Christ here. We've missed our encounter. Where's our road to Emmaus? Where's that table where we're seeing the bread breaking? Because we're missing it if we think it's just about business. I'll take that on. Text me, call me, because guess what? We can do better than that. We sure can. At home, we can do these lag metrics too, and they're helpful. We care about report cards. I care about that for myself, for my kids, now for my grandkids. David Hansen, some of you know Pastor David in the Gulf Coast Synod. He set a lag metric because it aggravates him that I have read more books than he has, okay? And so he is determined to read more books than me this year. And honestly, I'm taking it up. I can't pass it up. I'm in competition with David. He might win, actually, but it's okay. Both of us are trying to read as many books as we can. Why would we care about this as a lag metric? Because David knows this. One of my observations as I have been paying attention to leadership development in the last 6 years is this. I can tell the difference between a leader who is growing and a leader who is not by asking this question. Are you ready? What book are you reading? That's my question. What book are you reading? And it is not a rhetorical question. But I don't care what book you're reading. I care that you are reading, or watching YouTube videos, or listening to podcasts, checking out TED Talks. Like, here's the thing. Our world is changing at a rate faster than it's ever changed before. We've got to stay up with this. You guys, my 80-year-old dad, God bless his soul, is the president of his congregation and can meet on Zoom with me and can do Slack and is working on technology because we're accompanying him in this. He's still a learner. You're not done. We've got to keep reading. We've got to keep learning. That's the point of that. And this is why David is challenging me. So we have this lag going. You could join us in this. I'm thinking about a lead. I don't know what this will be called, so don't quote me on this, but some kind of a book group, a curated book group, because I think it would be fun to read together. Right? Yeah, we should do that. So maybe we'll figure that out. If we do, you'll hear about it. Here's one. How often is my house clean? This is kind of a lag, right? I know, right? Everybody's kind of squirming. We could ask this question. And look at the last one. How much do I weigh? That's a lag metric. I know. By the time we get on the scale, though, isn't it a little too late to change it? I'm saying. I know. You're following, right? These are lags. Let's look at leads that will shift those same lags we just looked at. At church, here's a lag for a lead at church. Are you praying more at home? At work even? Are you inviting friends, neighbors, and coworkers to share a meal with you more often? Why are these potential leads if we want nickels and noses? Why do we care if people are praying and inviting others into a meal? Any ideas? All about relationships. I told you yesterday, it's the commodity we trade on. It's all about relationships. And our relationships don't start with come to church with me. They start with let's have a cup of coffee and get to know each other better, right? They start with we're grilling. Maybe you would want to bring your family over and join us. That's how it starts. You know, it's been said the best front door of your congregation is the front door at your own house. And I would say at a nearby restaurant if you don't feel like cooking, okay? I mean, we don't have to cook to make this work. And we can always order out, friends. Let's get over that. Because as we sit around the table, it's not an accident that one of our sacraments happens at a table. And their eyes were open at the breaking of the bread. So this is key to who we are in our core values. And then let's look at some things to shift those lag metrics at home. I told you, studying, going to class. David, how much time? This is the lead he has set to win the day. This is why I think he has a chance. He has set an hour a day to read, 7 days a week. An hour a day to read. I'm pretty sure he's going to wipe me out here on the whole reading thing. We'll find out. Stay tuned. But you can do this too, right? He says, in all honesty, kind of like me saying I walk every day and it's generally about 5 days a week. He kind of said he sets the every day, but it's not quite that. Cleaning house, a lead is, how are the other people who live here going to help? Yeah, right? And maybe you live alone and you've got to sort that out a different way. Like maybe you have to ask yourself, am I going to spend 10 minutes a day putting this stuff away? And then when I look at that scale as a lag, my lead might be how much am I going to walk? 10 minutes a day, walk around the block every day. I mean, this doesn't have to be painful. This stuff can actually be pleasurable. And you could double dip. You could walk around the neighborhood and you could pray for your neighbors and you could say hello to them all at the same time. I know. Home run, right? Okay. So I want you to turn and talk about this. How is this lag and lead thing a possibility to open up space in your congregation? Talk with each other about the possibility of adding lead metrics, please. How are you doing with this? Can we come back together? Wow, thanks back there. You guys, thank you for starting this conversation. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to think about how we start to develop lead metrics. Lead metrics empower us. They give us the agency to carry out our work, right? Not every lead metric is going to solve the lag. It's going to be an experiment to figure that out. You're not going to always start with the right lead. You're going to have to try stuff. There's just no other way. Look, I have on the screen the adaptive triangle. Let's take one of the hotspots that we're observing. Last night, there were a group of people who came and talked to me in room 18 something or another, and the hotspot I was hearing is similar to hotspots I hear everywhere, especially in Texas, and that is a hotspot that says, the neighborhood around us is largely Spanish-speaking people, right? And the people in the congregation aren't excited about this. Hotspot. What can we do to observe this hotspot that could be helpful? What are the ways we could interpret that, and what are the interventions that could lead to a lead metric that might welcome in some Spanish-speaking people? And I'm talking about the kind of welcome that matters, not like just the all are welcome, but we don't really mean it welcome, okay? I mean, what are some observations we can make?
Yay, new neighbors.
All right, we could be perky, we could cheer it on, we could. But what if we got to digging into this and we could say, why? Why are we resistant? Why are we resistant to these neighbors? What is that really about? They're different. We don't know them. Fear of what? Fear of loss. They might take over. Yeah. We want people to come to be like us, but not really to come and be different. Yeah.
Maybe you should approach it as making them becoming friends and not members first.
Okay, so they could be friends and not members, which means they wouldn't get to vote. That's safer, yeah. Okay, let's get serious about this. Let's imagine, I'm going to just tell you a story about my home congregation. Faith Bel Air, you can check it out, true story. This congregation figured it was just like this story, okay? Neighbors are Latino. We know in Texas, in Houston, 71% of people under age 21 are Latino. 70% of people under age 21 are Latino. You got it? Very convincing data. But they went out and listened to their neighbors, and shock among shock, the closest elementary school to this church is about to become, at this time, a magnet Mandarin Chinese-speaking school. Who knew? Right? Nobody saw that coming. Now, truth be told, if they had just looked at the faces of the kids in their preschool, it would have been kind of obvious, because it's all Chinese children. But we're not doing that. We're just thinking about the demographics, and we're going to be calling an associate pastor to serve our neighborhood. And now we're in big trouble because it looks like this person needs to be a Mandarin Chinese person, and we're not liking this idea at all. Okay? We liked it a lot better. I mean, here's how it came to me. Peggy, we don't know anything about Mandarin Chinese people. We love margaritas. We're pretty great. We like mariachis. But we don't know anything about Mandarin Chinese people. How are we going to handle this? Learner mindset, right? They had to become learners. And long story short, this congregation discovered that there was one Mandarin Chinese speaking pastor in the ELCA, and he was in South Dakota. But as God would be working, that pastor, when he was called to see if he would be even interested, said, really, my family and I are going to Galveston at spring break this year. Once you start doing this, you guys, I'm not making this up. This isn't like some weird Pentecostal comment, but God starts working. The Spirit is ahead of us, okay? It's just true. So Pastor Tan is being called to this church, and the phone calls come to me. You think this is a good idea? People aren't sure. They're going to vote. They finally vote. I'm so proud of my church to pay for a pastor that they have called to not serve themselves. Do you hear me? Yes. Yes. Wow, I'm so grateful. And it is not a walk in the park. This is not easy. They're still sorting it out. It's been about 5 years, and they're still figuring out how these congregations, as one church, by the way, they mutually aggravated the whole church by changing worship times so that there would not be a Chinese ghetto, but we could be together. 2 of my grandchildren were baptized in the Chinese ministry. Isn't this the world that they are coming of age in? This is the world that will be normal for them, will be this multicultural, beautiful, beautiful world that some of us are resisting. And at Faith, they're sorting it out. You could sort this out. I think the observe is to get honest about our racism. I'm saying the hard stuff here. Is to get honest about what we're really afraid of. Yesterday when I talked about that life is fragile, we've got to talk about this hard stuff. We've got to get honest about this. This is the tension between our tradition and our vision and our time and place, okay? And once we start to observe that we ourselves, and I'm going to say me, all of us have within us a resistance to people who are not like us. Once we can name that and claim that to be true, now we can talk about it. And we can begin to say, as an interpret, we have a lot of fears here about this. We feel God calling us to do this, but we're very uncomfortable. And maybe we're going to spend a little time learning about the culture that we want to invite in, right? There's a real opportunity here to study the culture around us before we invite them in. There are people in your neighborhood you can invite in. You can go to the balcony and listen to them and get perspective. This is the adaptive work. And then you can create an experiment. At Faith, the first experiment was, we should have a Chinese New Year celebration. And we'll invite the kids, the families from the preschool. So they planned for about 150 people, thinking that would work pretty well. A few people from the church, the rest from the school. They had over 700 people show up. Yeah, you think it was a good experiment? It was wild. But it's an affirmation of their call to do this work. And when that happens, then some people will be excited and other people will be anxious and they will resist it even more. Now it's time to step into the leadership decision. Why do we exist as a church? Whose church is it? Who owns the church? These are real questions we have to wrestle with, and this is God's church. Let's just not even talk about that as an option, okay? It's God's church, and so we are stewarding God's mission at our place. And we have to ask ourselves what that shape looks like. And we can create an intervention and experiment with lag and lead metrics. We can say that the lag metric would be a more inclusive worshiping community, and the lead metric looks like 3 or 4 experiments to get to know our neighbors this year. And then we can say, how will those experiments take shape? And we can put flesh on those bones, and we can begin to listen to our neighbors. I have lots of stories that I can share with you about this, but does this make sense? It's incremental, you guys. This kind of change, I wish it could be actually slower than it is, because the shelf life of some of our congregations is shorter, right? We're a little more anxious. And the more anxious you are, the more you've got to dig into this, or you need to confess the truth that you're not going to do this. And ask yourself then, what is your mission? Okay? Now, everybody in our church matters. Please hear me say this. Everybody in our church matters. And so, figure that out. But don't blame it on the money. And don't blame it on the numbers and the fact that people won't participate. Let's tell the truth. We need to look at what are the lead metrics that we can do at our place that will actually shift our future in some direction, wherever we think God is calling us, okay? Now, we're going to run an experiment together in this room. We have time. You are going to give your bishop a gift by helping her name a hotspot in the synod and think about a lag and lead metric that might make sense. Here's why we're doing this. Not because she needs your help, although she does. She did not ask for this. I'm surprising her with this. Yes. But because you need to practice, and it's easier to practice when it's not about you, right? We can go to the balcony easier if we're focused on the other. So we're going to try it like that. You have a worksheet on page 9, and this is going to be the really important part of this. After I walk you through it and you do this work, on the very last page of your handout, there is a web address. It's waytolead.org. That's our lead website. Okay, can you find that somewhere in there? I'll find it. Yeah, it's on the very last page, waytolead.org. My email address is peggy@waytolead.org, okay? You can just put it right in front of that right now, peggy@. When one person at your table will need to fill this out, take a picture of it, and email it to me. And I will compile that for your bishop. Deal? Okay, so I'm gonna look for a zillion emails from this room. Really, just one from each table is fine. Okay? And here's how you're going to do this. Let me just walk you through it so you kind of see what you're going to do. We're going to invest only in about 10, 12 minutes in this. So you're going to have to work fast. You're going to imagine a lead metric that grows out of a hotspot in this synod. First, you name the hotspot. Then you put the lead metric to it. And then you think of the lags that might shift it. In here, I have an example as a congregational example. You can do a synod example. A hot spot in a congregation is the back doors open. People are visiting, but they're not sticking around. That's a hot spot in our congregations. Some of you know this hot spot. Okay, they come in, they worship a week or two, and we never see them again. Okay, hot spot. So depending on how you want to observe that, remember we've observed there's a hot spot. Now we have to interpret what that means. You could decide, is it about relationships, in which case maybe we want small groups? Is it about ownership? In other words, are we not inviting people into leadership when they come? Then we have to deal with that. Is it because our worship isn't inspiring? Then we have to look at an engaging worship. I don't know what it is, but you would have to sort that out. So you're going to observe a hot spot in this synod and ask, who can the synod listen to go to work on this hot spot? What is the intervention? Where are the lag and lead metrics? You get your work? Are you signing up for this? It will help. It will help you to do this work so that you're ready to do it at your place, and it will help your synod staff, your synod council. Okay, so let's give it a shot. Go to work around your tables, please.
Down where I live in the Rio Grande Valley, the Mexican population loves Chinese food.
That's awesome.
And every nail salon is owned, managed by Middle Eastern or Asian group.
Awesome. Sue just left. How much time do I have left?
About 15, let's see. Yeah, about 15 minutes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I wrote them all down here. The one thing that didn't come up, surprise, is diversity.
They're avoiding it. That's why I named racism. That's good.
The only thing we have after this is Carmen will do a quick stretch and pray before the costumes. So take 5 minutes, take a little longer.
I want to show them the movement video to end on, and I need them to do their eval cards. So that'll push us 5 minutes late.
Sounds good.
Are you getting it written down for your bishop? You've got 2 more minutes.
That's right.
Yeah. You can do it. Come on, no pressure. Okay, you've got 1 more minute. Do the best you can. Okay, friends, I'm going to bring us back together. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the Southwestern Texas Synod for staying long enough to have a chance today to name some hot spots, to mess around with some lag and lead metrics. Did it make more sense when you started doing it? Here's the thing about lead metrics. They often look like stories, right? And so you might ask, how do we really measure stories? Well, I can ask 10 families in my congregation to try mealtime grace and family devotions, and then I can ask them to tell the story of how it went. And then I can find out if I might get more families to do it. But here's the thing, in our churches, we're not actually measuring what matters, right? And so I hope you're taking a picture of what you wrote so that you can email it to me. I'd really love to get this so that we can compile this. You'll get the news back, I'm sure. There's lots of accountability in this system, so you'll hear back what people said. It won't be today. You know, my church sent out a survey, and they wanted to measure how faith formation was happening in our congregation. And they blew it in the survey. They said, which Sunday school class are you going to? I'm never at church because I do this, but I have a small group Bible study I meet with every other Monday night. And we are committed to studying Scripture together. It's a really big deal for all of us. And I don't have any line to fill in where else I might be learning about the faith story, right? They missed asking that question. And then they said, who is nurturing you in your faith? And they gave a list. And they didn't leave a blank. And so I didn't have a way to tell them that on the day they sent this was the very beginning of December last year. I didn't have any way to tell them, but by the way, I did email this in. I know you're not shocked now that we're getting to know each other, right? This did not go untold. That at Thanksgiving, we had dinner, the official dinner, at my daughter's house. But then we had all the leftovers on Friday at my house. My parents were there. We're gathering around. You can get this picture. We've got the Tupperware containers and the Ziploc bags all around us. This doesn't look like a holy meal. It's paper plates. And my parents are there. My daughter and son-in-law are there with the 2 grandkids, 2 little girls, my husband and I. And everyone's talking. And Josie, who's 2, says, I bless you, you bless me. I bless you, you bless me. And no one's listening to her. And my daughter says, wait, we've got to hear what Josie has to say. And so she interrupts the conversation, and Josie says it again. I bless you, you bless me. I bless you, you bless me. And my mom says, what does that mean? I don't understand. And my daughter says, she wants to bless you, and she wants you to bless her. And my mom said, I still don't understand. And so my daughter said, Josie, would you do the blessing? Josie walked around the table from person to person and made the sign of the cross on their forehead. And by the time she got to my mom, we were all crying. And then we said grace. But you know what? No one asked that question. And I want to tell you something. That's church too. What's happening in that kind of space needs to count. We need the stories that matter more than bucks and butts. We need to know where Christ is showing up in our midst, and the person who's leading us is a toddler. Right? When I told this to my pastor, because of course I did, he said, you're not going to believe this. She is the only person in the 40-something years I have served in ministry that when she comes to communion and I make the sign of the cross on her forehead, she does it back to me. How did she learn this? She learned this because the congregation does Faith 5. Very easy way of doing faith formation. It's from Rich Milheim. It's really good stuff. You can Google it. And her church launched the family to do this, and they did it. But like a church does, we just send out programs and we don't ever see what's really happening with them, right? So they could set lead metrics and they could say, how many families are actually doing Faith 5 at home? If you could stand up. Okay, the rest of you, you can talk to these people to learn how to do it. And they can identify who some of them are, and they can have them stand at the microphone and share why it's working for them. This actually did happen in our congregation once we began to realize the missing space. These lead metrics have power. Don't underestimate the stories, okay? On the Camino, the stories show up as little stamps on your passport. But in our churches, we have to create ways to get this done. And I'm inviting you to do that. Because, friends, we need to tell the stories so that people do feel welcome at our table. I think the most important story that we have to wrestle with, the most important hotspot, is who is really welcome there. And at the last time I shared this, somebody said, hospitality is the wrong word, welcome is the right word. We need to work on that. Because if people really feel welcome, all people, they won't be able to resist it. Aren't you dying to belong? Everybody wants this. And so if we can start to create space where we do love our neighbors as ourselves, it will change everything. So one of the keys to shifting our future is these metrics. And I want to invite you to start a ruckus with this. You know, let me see if I've gone too far. Yep, this is right. So here's what I mean by starting a ruckus, okay? Here's a video to get you in the mood. Oh, we need some sound. Should I stop? Perfect.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not two nuts, 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that at TED. Thanks.
So I started yesterday with a picture of my granddaughter. My prayer is that we have a church for this girl and for all the kids in the back, right? And that's going to require us to kind of act like a lone nut and to get some first followers. If you haven't emailed me the document, please do. And if you haven't filled out your evaluation, please do. Let's pray together. God, give us the courage to start a ruckus, to be a church that people can't resist, to love our neighbors as you have loved us. Give us the courage, Lord, to lead forward in this crazy time. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Peggy. We are so grateful for your leadership. And now, as Cross Trails gets ready to set up and begin, Pastor Carmen Retzlaff's going to stretch and pray us in, or out, or wherever you're going next. But we hope you'll stay in.
All right. I hope some of you will stand and stretch and pray with me. I know some of you need to use the bathroom, but those who don't,